My story. Origin story. I was born in Uganda, Jinja. I was adopted from Uganda along with my older sister in 2006. I was about almost 3. And then I lived in Wisconsin for a little bit. And then in 2007, my dad got a job here at Michigan State University. And so then we moved in 2007, adopted from Uganda. So this past summer, some of my family members and I and people from my church got to go back to Uganda. It was a long time coming. Growing up, we're how are 6 kids and people from church supposed to go to Uganda? And how's that gonna work out? So then in 2020, we're okay, we're shooting for Uganda. There's about 20 of us that were gonna go. COVID didn't end up working out. 2021, let's try again. Also didn't end up working out. So then 2022, let's take a break. But then this past summer, we got to go and we were there for about 2 weeks in July. And for my sister now, we haven't been back for about 17 years, almost 18 years, which is a long time. But when we landed, so there was a lot of I don't know what's gonna happen. We don't really remember a lot. We were so young. So the only memory we have of the place is in videos, in pictures, stories that my parents told us. My parents even wrote a book about it called The Invitation. So there's just a lot of anticipation and nerves. Also just, it's such a different culture. So I'm thinking, Rhoda and I, we look like them, but we don't really know the culture as much. But when we landed and we got to walk in the orphanage and just see the workers there, they're called mums. A lot of the mums that worked there, when my sister and I were there at a young age, still worked there, which was crazy. And so you're we're making our own memories here. And so when you walk in, there's all these little kids and they're taking their naps, and then the mums, they're working and cleaning. And we were walking in. By the way, there's a lot of red dirt in Uganda. So we're there's all this dirt and stuff like that. And there's laundry hanging. And then there's this open space where there's a table and a cook. And so while they're cooking lunch and stuff like that, these little kids are peeping, and you're just looking at them and just going or at least for me, I was just that was me. I was 3, these little 2 or 3, and these little kids are looking at us going oh, who's here? And then there's the moms, and there's Mama Rose, Mama Mama Stella, she was my mama. So sometimes the mums, they weren't assigned specific children, but they were drawn to specific children. For my sister, she had a lot of health problems. Growing up, she was sick as a baby, had hydrocephalus. And then for me, I was born prematurely. So their children coming in either come from abusive families or are neglected on the street, or just a lot of preemies born early. So there's different rooms, and one of the first rooms we walked into was the preemie room. So babies born, I was 3 pounds and 6 ounces. So there's these tiny little babies, and they're in their little cradles, and some of the moms are holding them, and just to be there was just man, this is so crazy. It just, I didn't really know how to experience it in the process it in the moment. Anyways, but just to see the moms again, and they're looking at us, and they remember us. They're Rhoda, Maria, and we're we remember you from pictures and photos, but just the emotional connection to that after 17 years of not seeing them anymore, and then being able to reconnect, that was one of the hugest takeaways that I'm still processing from that trip. It was just wow. But while we were there, we kind of came up with this thing where we would work on coordination skills and encouraging them and affirming them a lot with what was put in my upbringing as well, and just trying to speak into their lives, because these kids have been through a lot. There's one instance where these 2 kids came in. Mama Mandy, she's the director at Welcome Home Orphanage in Jinja. And she was leading us around the orphanage, and these 2 kids were brought in, and they had blisters on their hands because their grandma, they weren't supposed to eat, was it that story? They weren't supposed to eat some food, and their hands were tied together and burned. So also there was a lot of kids with damages because the parents abused them. And so they're coming in, and it's just wow, it's you don't really know how to process that sometimes, because no kid should ever have to go through that, which is what Welcome Home does a really great job of doing. It's a place where kids are nourished back to health and loved, and in this case, in my faith, it's a huge part just knowing that they're loved by God. And part of my job there at Welcome Home was bringing music to them. Because if you don't know Uganda, they like to dance, they have the drums, they have no idea what a violin is. So I brought my violin there. They had extra guitars and we like put strings on them. I was kind of like the worship leader there. So being a kid who was adopted from Welcome Home, we would have them line up on these steps in like the little courtyard that they played at. And my mom would be like, okay, everyone, gather around. Maria's going to be playing some worship songs. And so we have this little kid who's like about 8 years old and still in the process of like being adopted. It's a long process. For me, it was quite short. So he's playing the drum. I have my violin, and they're all like, what is that? And I'm like, it's a violin. And there's also a language barrier, too, because these kids are so young, so they only know Luganda and bits and pieces of English. But like music is a very cultural experience that like goes past language barriers. So I'm playing my violin and they're like, whoa, and like trying to touch it, and I'm like, oh, don't touch it. But like you just see them light up inside. And there was one night when after like we've been playing with the kids, like it's been a hot day, we're a little sweaty, a little tired, I pull out my violin and they're like, oh my gosh, are you gonna like come and play your violin? I'm like, yeah. And I asked one of the kids to like play the drum. I'm like, hey, can you play a beat on the drum? And then I just start to improvise on the violin. And then all these kids start coming around and the moms start coming around. And they're like, oh my gosh, Maria. And and I just start playing just this little fiddle tune while one of the little kids is drumming and like everyone is dancing. My brothers got to be on that trip, my little brother and my older brother. And like they're dancing with the little kids. My mom is dancing. Rhoda's like holding one of the little babies. And it's just like you're looking around. It's just like, Rhoda and I used to be from here, and like we're sitting on the steps that like we used to walk on, and like this is a new generation of kids that we're probably not going to be able to see again. And the musical talents that I got to be like cultivated in and like gifted in and just grow in that, I could share that with them. And that was such a special experience to just like bring something that really cared so much to me and just give it to them in a way where they'll probably remember that for the rest of their lives. Even if they're really young, they'll be like, you know, there's this like one girl who used to be from here who played the violin for us. And that was just so cool. I played this jig for the little kids, which they danced to, at Welcome Home Orphanage in Jinja, Uganda. This next song I'm about to play is dedicated to Maria from Welcome Home Orphanage in Jinja. It is How Great Thou Art.